just realized I'm wearing a Super Sentai jacket during a Kamen Rider video. I've come to realize Twitter's an easy way to make videos. Hi, Editor Guns. So at the Omega Rider made this tweet chain about questions for Kamen Rider fans, and I'm kind of a Kamen Rider fan, so I figure might as well answer them here too. So the obvious answer is gonna be, oh, it depends on whoever's writing the season, it depends on the season, and I don't want to give that cop-out answer for everything, because, for example, this first one is, how many writers should there be in the season? You could say, it depends, and I want to give something more straightforward, something, if not generalized, at least something that I personally believe would work. And that's kind of the point, it's for fun, you know, and you can always answer these in the comments below too. With that out of the way, let's get started with, how many writers should there be in a season? This one might be one of the most difficult ones already, and it's literally the first one, because as much as I want to say it depends or I don't know, I think a more significant answer could really change depending on the story. But I guess if you want to just have the basics of a writer, good writer versus evil that they have to defeat, then I want to say a good basis for a number of writers could be 3 to 5. When I think back to previous seasons like Kamen Rider Wizard, or even like early on with Kamen Rider Agito, those didn't really have too many writers. Wizard only had 2, and Agito had 4, I believe. Agito, G3, Gills, another Agito. Another Agito barely counts though, he was like barely in the show. So I think you can get what I'm saying with that. A good story can be told with up to 100 writers if the writer was really up to it, like the story writer was really up to it. But I think a good basis could just be a small handful. It could just be like a Revice, or it could just be a Wizard, it could be an Agito. And wow, every single one of those shows I'm actually not a fan of. And that's why I'm saying it should be a small handful to start. I think that should be the basics. I think if we're talking about a good Kamen Rider season, they usually start with a good like 3 to 5, something like that. And then if you want to have more writers, then I think that's okay too. But like I said, 3 to 5, I think it's good. Are there too many gimmicks in Kamen Rider? Oh yeah, I've answered this a couple times before already. So I'm gonna say, nah. No, not really. A lot of people do like to complain that there are too many toys to sell, but to me, it's never bothered me. Why? Because I know what I'm watching. I know these shows are meant to sell toys and merchandise. I know. And if you want to talk more of a story side of it, the toys aren't there in like an intrusive way, at least not too often, because even in shows like Geo and Revice, where there are a lot of Vice stamps, there are a lot of ride watches, I think they're there for good reason. And in Geo's case, even though they are weird story-wise, I don't mind, they're cool collectibles. I have ride watches, I have Vice stamps. I have a lot of toy gimmicks because either I like how they look, I like their sound, I like the characters who use them. I like the toys, and it never really bothered me. Should Kamen Rider go back to 1 writer per season? Is this gonna be controversial? I'm gonna say nah. A lot of the Showa era are just 1 writer per season. I think the only few that aren't are like V3 kind of, and yeah, every other Showa writer just has single writer, and the only one in Heisei that has a single writer was Kuga. And guess what? Guns, I couldn't imagine you just like zooming into my face there with my expression, you know, going like, I am not the biggest fan of Showa, and Kuga is not my favorite either. And a lot of it is because they are single writer shows. I'm watching these for the story and the characters, yeah, but I like Kamen Rider for the superhero aspect. And if there's just a single Kuga or a single Ichigo, Nigo V3 Rider Man, I'm kind of turned off by it. I'm kind of not interested. And it's one reason why I kind of don't really watch that much Ultraman. As much as I love it, I have to be like in the mood for it because there's usually a single Ultraman in those seasons. And then when you have like Ichigo and Nigo and then V3 with Rider Man, that's kind of interesting, but they're not together all the time. It's not just like one, it's not just them for like the whole show. It usually is just one or the other for their seasons. And then you go on to like Super One and Amazon and Stronger, and I like Stronger. I like Z-Cross. But otherwise, the rest kind of bores me. Like Black and Black RX, they kind of bore me. And Kuga, oh my gosh, I know it's a good show. I know it's iconic and this historic season that everybody loves, but it does bore me, and so does some Ultraman because there is just a single Ultraman. But I want to watch these other superhero shows. Like Hibiki, for the most part, it is like this single hero show because Todoroki and Zanki show up, but they're just there. They're sprinkled in, and you can count them as like the trio. But for the most part, it is the Hibiki and Asamu show. And I will say, I like their stories, but even if the other characters or other costumed heroes are sprinkled in, they're still there. There's still action. There's still focus on them. But meanwhile, Kuga, yeah, I love the supporting cast. I love Ichijo and John and the other one. But at the end of the episode, it is just going to be that single Kuga when it would be cool to see Ichijo be a rider. It would be cool to see another hero, and I think I'm going on way too long for this one. Nuh-uh, I think Kamen Rider should have at least two. At least two. Is Shocker an interesting antagonist? Wow, 3 nuh-uhs in a row. Yeah, I don't think so. If only because they were interesting in the beginning, because Ichigo did have this sense of horror, and it did have like this really scary side to Shocker, and when you do see them later on in the show era, they are pretty intimidating. But then as the years go on, they just become less interesting and more just, oh, it's that thing from the 70s and they're back again. Look how outdated they are. I want to say Shocker is interesting when they're in their own season, but over the years they just become less and less interesting. I want to say there might be a way to make them interesting, but I'm not a creative guy. I just talk to a camera. Should Kamen Rider get English dubs in the US or another chance at an American adaptation? So a couple of years ago, I was part of a group that kind of had to deal with Toei. And one conversation that was brought up was if we were interested in more American adaptations or English dubs. It was actually more of, would you rather see an English dub or an American adaptation? And I believe the answer I gave was, I personally would love to see an adaptation, but a more general answer, I would love to see both. If it were up to me, I would say yes, absolutely. I would love another American adaptation. Even if it was as bad as Masked Rider, there's no way it can be, right? Like, we have modern technology, we have writers, story writers, that I believe can tell a superhero story just fine, or even adapting a Japanese Kamen Rider show to an American one. I believe we're in that point where, yes, it's possible. And the same thing can be said about English dubs. Like, it's not the 90s anymore. We're not gonna have any more, whoa, look at that thing, we gotta fight Shocker. No, we actually have like voice actors that do a really good job. Even current anime has some really good English dubs. And I think that can be done with Kamen Rider. Some people might not like to see it, but honestly, I think it would. But honestly, that's just taking away accessibility. And a lot of people don't want to read subtitles, and that's okay. A lot of the times I don't want to read subtitles, but an English dub will just be another point of access for those people. It would be another point of access for me, especially if they're legally distributed. And my second point for English dubs is that it would be a lot cheaper to dub them than making a whole American adaptation. But those are my main two things: accessibility and cheaper, I guess. And I mean, those are two things, but they're very, very important things. Because like I said, I think accessibility is one of the most important things to have when it comes to distributing a Japanese property, franchise IP over to America. And besides, I would love to multitask while watching Kamen Rider with an English dub. And if they keep everything else, like music, sound effects, the jingles, of course, in Japanese, I think people would be okay with that. Now, if it was to be distributed through television, that's a whole other thing. But if it was streamed through like Netflix and stuff, I feel like it would just be another one of those Japanese franchises that would be cool to have in English, because I know Squid Games and Alice in Borderlands, they're dubbed in English, and I watch them in English, and they're really, really good in English. A lot of it is really good, and I probably wouldn't have watched those shows if I only watched them with subtitles. So again, yes, I would love an English dub. Now, American adaptation, I would prefer, but it's not realistic. For one, it would be incredibly expensive just to buy the right to make an adaptation alone. Because Toei sells each of these series like as themselves. They don't sell them as Kamen Rider, they sell them as Kamen Rider 01, as Kamen Rider Geo, as Kamen Rider Build, Kamen Rider X8. They sell them all separately. And those can cost millions and millions of dollars. And they won't give you extra help for anything. So millions of dollars just to have the rights, millions or hundreds of thousands of dollars just to produce a single episode. That is a lot of money, and you're probably not going to see any return, so it's just not realistic. Impossible? I wouldn't say so. Realistic? That's the argument. But the reason I would personally like American adaptations is because I just think it would be really cool to have that again. Like I said earlier, it's not the 90s anymore, and we don't really get those kinds of adaptations. Now we just get dubs, and that's a good thing. I'm glad we do get the dubs, but a little bit of me would like to see that return to like Big Bad Beetleborgs, and of course Power Rangers, former behemoth that it was. It would be cool to see a Masked Rider Extreme Maid, or a Masked Rider Build, or a Masked Rider Decade, or something. I don't know, it would just be cool. But that's the only argument I have towards it. It would just be cool to have it. And if it would actually start some like grassroots for Kamen Rider to be big in America, that would be big. But the main argument is not realistic. What do you think is holding Kamen Rider back from being popular in the US? This one has a lot of quote retweets, and a lot of them say Toei. I have to agree. It's Toei. I don't have anything new to add. You've probably heard all of these arguments before. Tsuburaya is doing the right way to distribute. Toei is not. That's all I'll say. I see the Toei sniper already aiming at me. I'm gonna move on. Should Kamen Rider be dark/serious? Isn't it already? I mean, yeah, there's silly moments, but Super Sentai is the more serious one, while Kamen Rider is meant for the adolescents. Not like teenagers, like 13-year-olds, but more like 10, 8-year-olds, while Sentai is meant more for like the younger, like 5-year-olds. And I've heard that before. I believe it was one of the Shirokura interviews. I forget exactly, but one of the interviews from Toei said that was pretty much the case. And that's why Kamen Rider is a bit more darker. And I mean, it already is dark and serious. I mean, would I rather have it more like Black Sun and Amazons? Probably not, because that's kind of the charm of Kamen Rider, is that yes, it's dark/serious/mature/ yada yada, but it's not always Amazons and Black Sun. It's not always that dark and serious. So, sure. What got you into Kamen Rider, and what made you stay for it? Maybe the main answer I could give for this, and I've given a lot of answers over the years, but maybe the main answer I can give is just, it's nostalgic. I grew up with Power Rangers, and now that I see this Kamen Rider thing with like these new suits and like 50 years of a legacy, it means a lot to me. And seeing that Power Rangers is like in the same bubble of Tokusatsu alongside Super Sentai and Garo, Legend Hero, and Godzilla, all this big bubble with Kamen Rider being one of the biggest in that, it was really interesting to me. And I guess the first thing I saw was the suits and the action, and obviously that was cool, but what made me stay were the characters in the story. I mean, legacy is like the third thing, but the characters in the stories were just not like Power Rangers, and they were something that I really enjoyed. So I just like Kamen Rider. I say wearing a Super Sentai jacket. If we did get our first female main writer, what would be some concerns you'd have for it outside of fandom? I can't really think of anything. I don't think I could say what could go wrong with a female main writer. It would be really cool, and it's actually something I would absolutely love. It's like, if I had a list of like top 10 things I want to see in Kamen Rider, a female main writer would definitely be part of it. But anything that could go seriously wrong with it, maybe just like how the story writer handles them. But if they're the main writer, then I don't think it could be that bad. This might be a non-answer, but I don't think I have too many concerns. If you are, why are you excited for Shin Kamen Rider? This is gonna be controversial. I'm not excited for Shin Kamen Rider. I know that sounds crazy because I was exploding for Shin Ultraman, and now Shin Kamen Rider, the thing that I focus on the most, the Kamen Rider guy, is not excited for Shin Kamen Rider, the Hideaki Anno movie that also helped with Shin Ultraman. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it'll be cool, and I'm happy for those that are excited, but I'm just not interested in Shin Kamen Rider. I can't give you a reason why I'm not interested in Shin Kamen Rider. Like, the recreation of the original intro was cool. Like, I love the suits. I love that, like, they have the actual hair poking out of the suits. I love the scarves. I love that Ichigo and Nigo look completely different. I like how Nigo's a lot taller. That's really cool. I love the visuals, but otherwise, I probably am not gonna see it until like way later. So I think Shin Ultraman just took all my excitement, honestly. What's something the MCU could learn from Kamen Rider or Toku in general, and vice versa? I think the MCU has gotten a lot better at this, but I remember before some fight scenes were kind of hard to watch because of the shaky cam and stuff. And while Kamen Rider does have shaky cam too, and they do close-ups, Kamen Rider shows you a lot of the action. A lot of the times they have these wide shots of like the riders coming in to fight the enemies. While the MCU, it usually is more like this, rather than like this, and it's kind of hard to like see the action going like that. Like I said, the MCU has gone a lot better with it, but a lot of the times that was kind of my main issue. It was hard to see the fights. I also think the MCU could learn to, how should I put this, not be scared of its own legacy in terms of the comics. I'm not the kind of guy to say, oh, the MCU humor, he's right behind me, isn't he? Yada yada. I don't think that's an issue, honestly. I think it got overblown. I think it became a stereotype that just has really nothing to do with the MCU in general. But what bothers me the most are the meta jokes, the we're with it, we're laughing alongside you kind of jokes. The most obvious ones to me were was in the Ant-Man Quantumania movie when, and I was like, oh, haha, I get it. Or in Spider-Man No Way Home, when Spider-Man and his friends are talking to Otto Octavius, or Dr. Octopus, and Dr. Octopus introduces himself, and he's like, Otto Octavius, and then they giggle. They're like, haha, now what's your real name? I'm like, I don't. There's nothing wrong with that name. It's just a name. It's not that funny. I think the only time they pulled it off was with Doctor Strange and Spider-Man meeting for the first time in one of the Avengers movies. And Doctor Strange introduces himself as like, oh, I'm Doctor Strange. And then Spider-Man's like, oh, we're using our made-up names. I'm Spider-Man then. I thought that was funny. That was probably like the only time I actually laughed at one of those jokes. But otherwise, they should probably not stick with that meta humor so much, because I'm pretty sure in universe they're taking themselves seriously, but outside of this, I'm just like, oh, one of those jokes, huh? What were y'all's thoughts on the reception of Futo PI in the West? I heard a lot of the fans say that they liked Futo PI, and me personally, yeah, it was good. I liked it enough, you know, it was okay. But the other side of the reception of it was that anime reviewers weren't really talking about it. And to me, I didn't know. I don't watch anime reviewers. I think the last one was like Mother's Basement that I watched like 3 years ago or something. But still, just because someone isn't talking about it doesn't mean it's not successful or that we need to see someone talk about it. Because I enjoyed Futo PI enough. I'm sure it got a big enough fan base, and I don't think we need a YouTuber, like a 1 million subscriber YouTuber to show that they watched Futo PI. It would be nice, yeah. It would be absolutely fantastic. I would love it if I see a Mother's Basement video that says Futo PI is really, really good and you should watch it. Great. More viewers for the show then. But otherwise, I watched it. Does Kamen Rider sometimes have an MMPR problem? You figure out what that means. If they want me to figure out what it means, I'm gonna assume that how MMPR is just like the face of Power Rangers in America, and that we get MMPR nonstop while all the other shows, except maybe in space, are just like left in the dust. Kamen Rider, nah, it doesn't do that. And when they do bring back Ichigo, it's usually, or all of the time, just for like a special occasion or a special anniversary. Superhero Senki was the last time I saw him. Before that, it was the Ghost movie for Ichigo, and that was an anniversary, so easy answer. Nuh-uh. What are some concerns you have for Shin Kamen Rider and its eventual US release? That not enough people watch it. I mean, if it comes to the US, I'll watch it, I'll buy it, I'll support it. That's probably the only time I'll watch it. But otherwise, I just hope people enjoy it. What are some ideas you've had that you're surprised hasn't been done in Kamen Rider? I don't think they mean themes, like in terms of like suits and designs and aesthetic and stuff. I think they just mean overall ideas. So the one I've really been wanting the most, and I know they're not going to do this for a lot of reasons, but something I personally really want to see is that halfway through the show, or maybe even like early on in the show, a lot of the marketing goes towards this one character, like this main character that we're gonna stick with, and a lot of people are gonna know who they are, and their story is focused on them like crazy, and they're the face, they are the new main writer. But then later on, either early on, like episode 13 or 20 or something, that character passes on for one reason or another. They don't have to outright die, but they can't fight anymore. And so then the secondary character, that isn't a writer at all, but the secondary supporting character that's been with them since the beginning is past the mantle of that main writer. I love those stories of legacy. I love those stories of having to pass on this power that you probably wouldn't want to have because it's not yours, but you had to accept it because they're the ones they entrust you with this power. I think that would go so hard. It would be so crazy. I know Kabuto kind of did it, but I'm talking more in the main season, in the main show. And then later on, down the line, maybe someone's going to discuss, oh, remember that one season of Kamen Rider? Who was the main writer? Oh, it was both of them. No, it was the first one. No, it's the second one. I just think it would have a lot of cool discussion, a lot of cool story, a lot of cool legacy, especially if you want to bring them back, like both of them back for a later anniversary season or something. And I know people are going to bring up Nexus. I know Nexus does it, okay? I know. But this is Kamen Rider, and I wish Kamen Rider would do that. Are all of the crossover movies / specials worth the watch? Yes. What is your go-to season when someone wants to get into Kamen Rider? Whatever looks coolest to them. If you're introducing someone new to Kamen Rider, you probably know or ask them, hey, out of these writers, what do you think looks the coolest? Or, hey, do you like storybooks? Do you like detectives? Do you like outer space, high school, slice of life? Easy from there. That's it. Otherwise, the Heisei Phase 1 trilogy of Double O's Forze, but the main answer is whatever looks cool. Quote unquote, is this Japanese Power Rangers? I'm okay with the phrase. Are female writers done well most of the time? I remember seeing a quote retweet of this, and they were naming off basically every single main female writer, and they were like, well, aside from Poppy, Valkyrie, Fam, yada 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 yada. And that's basically all of them at that point. I mean, who are you trying to call out? Do I think female writers are done well most of the time? I think Marco was done well. I mean, she could have improvements, but for what we got, I think she was done well. I think Poppy was done well, if only because she was a supporting character who became a writer and she had a lot of story on her own. I think she was done very well. Valkyrie, yeah, she was done dirty, but I mean, at least she's our third writer, so I mean, I'll still say no for Valkyrie. Neon is superb. I want to say, like, we've had more hits than misses. Your Kamen Rider husbando / waifu will have with you, but they have to be henshin. Do you accept? I'm gonna have to do a smash or pass one of these days, huh? Who is the best Dark Rider or Evil Kamen Rider? Does Heart count? I think Heart. I'm gonna say Kamen Rider Heart. Who had the best Rampage form, and what do you think of this trope? I think collectively in the English-speaking fandom, we start calling these kinds of forms berserker forms, and the most obvious one is going to be Kamen Rider Build Hazard. Story-wise, suit-wise, jingle, everything's so good. Perfect. Absolutely. It is great. And the trope, I do like it sometimes, but if it starts to become a trend year after year after year, it starts to become a little boring, because I know 01 had that, and then Saber, sure, whatever. Revice, you can kind of call Jack Revice one, kind of, if only by technicality, but the trope-ish is still there, and after like 3 years in a row, I'm really glad Geats didn't have that. I mean, hopefully so far. I get tired of the trope, but otherwise, it's fine. I don't mind, especially with Build Hazard. If Kamen Rider did get a fusion season like Ultraman Jeet or Orb, what fusions would you be excited to see? Anything that has to do with Amazons or Black Sun. I just want to see that. Half and half forms versus complete forms. 2 or more items for a combined form, or 1 item for a complete form. With this one, we're talking about gimmicks, so they're showing double on the screen, but you can also count like build because they use 2 gimmicks to transform into one thing. Or a whole complete form, as you've seen with most shows like 01, most of Heisei. I want to say the singular forms are a lot better, because while I do love the creativity it takes to make like these 2 half and halves having to look good as a whole, I think the singular forms just flow a lot better. Like, they're meant to be just this singular thing. Like 01 is just 01 with his hopper, that's literally it, and it's clean. It's cool. That's all I need. I do love the combo forms, though. I do love double, I do love build, but I think the cleanness of a singular form is pretty good. Outside of who is the most fingernail Kamen Rider? Me? Best Kamen Rider ship? Poppy and Emu. That's literally the only one I ship. I'm not a shipping person. I'm just like, oh, these characters, they're together and they like each other, or in terms of drive, oh, they're married. That's cool. That's fine. I like romance. It's a cool story, but otherwise I don't really ship characters and stuff like that. But I do like Poppy Emu. They do have this really cute chemistry, and I think that's pretty much it. It's cute. What streaming service would Kamen Rider do best on in the West? Netflix. Or Amazon Video. So after that 01 comic, would you trust them to make a Ryuki / any other Kamen Rider season comic series? I like how Ryuki was specifically pointed out here. I want to say yes, because as far as I know, they are listening to feedback, at least in terms of like distributors and publishers. They are listening to fans. So if fans say, hey, we want another comic, but we want someone who knows the story more, then hopefully they'll do that. Because in terms of the 01 comic, it is weird character-wise. But hopefully if they do this again, then I think they'll improve upon it. Is the grind to watch Geo without being spoiled on previous seasons worth it? Yes, if only because you watch more Kamen Rider. If a Kamen Rider fighting game was announced, what style of fighter would you like it to be? Good thing I made a whole video about that. If there was an Akiba Ranger-esque writer show, what gags / characters would you like to see? I don't know about what I'd like to see, but I would love a parody Kamen Rider show. That'd be cool. An official one. Officially unofficial. Just like Akiba Ranger. But you know what I mean. How do you feel about the Legend Rider gimmicks from non-anniversary shows? This is another one where I'm like, I like it in concept, but it does get a bit too much. I'm not opposed to gimmicks. I don't mind them, especially in the shows. But once we have more outside of the shows, especially with anniversary gimmicks, it just gets a bit too much for me. That's probably where I draw the line. Just a lot of these anniversary gimmicks that have no need to exist. And that's it. Thank you to Twitter for having this whole like thread for me and a whole other video to make. This was really cool. I like doing these. I like having these these chill couch kind of videos, so that way we have our editors, working on stuff that they enjoy, while I also enjoy talking to my phone and having my neighbors hear me. But otherwise, I'll see you next time.